Hello there, good evening, very late in the evening, and welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Steve O'Matt, and as I always do, I'd say it's a pleasure to have you back here on the channel with me. But unfortunately, the backdrop to the reason that we're here tonight isn't exactly a pleasure. It's a grind, it's a necessary evil, and it's just something that we need to do because win, lose, or draw, no matter what goes on, we as Celtic fans and ourselves as a Celtic podcast and platform, we face up to our responsibilities and we come on and we talk about it. Whether it's as vile as it was tonight or whether it's a positive one, we've got to get through it. Now, I can already see there's a floodies coming in. I know that everybody's going to be bailing. Let's not kid ourselves on. Celtic fans get angry too. We'll all be raging about this one and it'll linger in the memory for quite a while. This one will sting. But you can add it to the pile of failures over the years. I know I'm laughing because if you didn't laugh, you would cry. But it is what it is. And unfortunately, it's going to be Thursday, Sunday, Europa League. Going to have to eat that one up. And there's plenty to pick through here. We could sit here and we could just moan. And let's not kid ourselves on. That's probably what we're going to do. But that's perfectly fine. So before we do that, as I say, I'll just skip through it. Thanks for supporting the channel. Plenty if I've done so. If you like what you've seen here, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe. Most important thing, costs you absolutely nothing. All the content's free and we appreciate it. And by now, you know the score. It's all down below. You can get us elsewhere on our multiple social media feeds. So I can see that there's hundreds of you wanting to make some comments already, and believe me, I will try and get my best way to get through these and bring up as much of these as I possibly can. I know that it's going to be thick and fast, so bear with me. I also know that there's probably going to be some infiltrators in here, but what I will say about that is that's perfectly fine because we can't sit here and laugh when they fall and not expect to suck it up. Tonight is one of those situations where, whether you like it or not, strap yourselves in because you can't laugh at one people on the other hand and then do what we just did and not expect to take some in return. So toughen up, people, and get on with it. So there isn't very much positive, is there, to speak about tonight? Let's have a wee think about where it went wrong. Multiple questions, isn't there? And the one thing that I do see continuously, and I can already see it in the chat, is that people are going to turn around and solely 100% levy the blame at the board. Now, you know my stance on the board, you know Paddy's stance on the board, you know this podcast stance on the board. We have been ever present and uncompromising and are very blunt, are very direct opinion on the board, including our last episode, in which all we essentially did was deep dive the board and give them a bit of a kicking. We've been completely transparent. In no way, shape or form are we sitting here to get on board and back the board and be happy clappers, as they say. But I want to just get this straight off my chest right at the front. Are the board to blame for us losing tonight? Well, in my opinion, no, they're not. They historically hold a massive portion of the blame, and as to why we have historically over multiple seasons, not exclusively to just this season here, they have been a big factor in us failing to push on, particularly in Europe, because what we know that domestically, and that's your bread and butter, and that's great. We know domestically it's been massive success, but it has always masked deficiencies, and those deficiencies have always been in replacing, investing, growing this squad, adding a certain level of quality, particularly when we move players on to bring that in kind that's going to help us get to the next level. We know that. It's nothing new. We've covered it in great detail. However, tonight, I think it's the players, it's the manager. Let's not avoid that fact. Let's not kid ourselves on. And what I would say is yes, going out and buying players, we've championed it. You're fed up of me saying it, fed up at everybody in every other podcast saying it. Go out there, prepare. If you fail to prepare properly, then you prepare to fail. And yes, would have had more options on the bench, the wingers that we need, an additional striker. Absolutely. Of course, it is going to help you out. And of course, it's what we would have needed and we would have wanted. But again, I say this has happened season after season. This isn't something new. It's not exclusive to this. It's not exclusive to poor Brendan Rodgers in this season. But the footnotes here are, and there's no way dressing that up. We went through it. We didn't add any people for the transfer deadline in terms of registering new players for these 2 matches. You're right what you saw. However, Celtic played a team who are ranked 311th in the the UEFA rankings. They are the lowest ranked team that any Scottish side in any of the levels of the European football that Scottish teams have been competing in have been at. Kairat are the lowest of any team that a Scottish side has played in Europe. 311th in Europe. They have a manager who hasn't quite got all of his badges. You heard them saying that. And they have a team whose combined market value is £12.45 million, whereas Celtic's apparent market value is around about £131 million. Yes, we could have been doing with reinforcements. However, if you couldn't, and I said it, and I'll reiterate it, I have no shame in saying it, I said it at the time, clip it, bring it out there, wheel it back out, I don't care, I will die in that hill. I said all week, from when the draw got made, that I thought that if Celtic lost tonight, it would be one of the most embarrassing, darkest moments of Celtic Football Club's recent history, and certainly in European history, and I stand by that. I'm not going to back down from that. That was embarrassing. I sit in front of you right now at this moment in time, quite frankly, ashamed of what I saw. And I said on our social media that I think that we are now already, at least maybe in a European standpoint, we've fallen into that will not be as bad as that again category. Remember that? Remember last season after we beat Rangers in the League Cup final and we said we'll never be that bad again. And then we just went and put out the honking performances that we did against them each and every single time that we played them. We're already finding ourselves in this here. We are in a stage where we are making excuses. We're trying to find excuses, and I understand that the instant pivot is always to go to the board, and hey, they deserve absolutely everything that's coming their way in terms of criticism and anger from fans. That's understandable. But as I said, this isn't exclusive to this season, and it's not the root source of why Celtic went out. We sit on here, other podcasts sit on here, social media, you see people talking about it. And we've used the term, we have an elite manager. We have an elite class manager, possibly the best in class that we could get at this moment in time at our club. Now, when you peel back the curtain and you look at what he was playing against in terms of manager, and then even just to scratch the surface, it's not going to be a pile on to Brendan Rodgers, but I think for the balance, we need to actually sit here and state these facts. We can't, no one is getting themselves away from blame here. Nobody. No player can avoid blame. No manager, well, there is only one manager, but no person in that coaching staff can be ridden of blame. Yes, the board don't help things, but at the end of the day, we've had 2 full weeks profiling the opposition, analytics, watching the VT, planning, setting out the game plan, training, and it's up for those people to stand and deliver. It's up for those folk that go out on the pitch to make it happen. It's up to the manager and the coaching staff to find a way to beat teams. And we didn't do it. Whether people like that or don't, that's the reality of the situation. Celtic failed to break down a team who, I'm not going to sit here and say we're a great team. I'm also not going to say that we're a shit team or a terrible team, but they were certainly one of the more average European sides that we've played. And yes, they had 1 or 2 good players, but the excuses were well and truly out the window last week when you saw the manager, when you heard our captain, Cal McGregor, giving it big licks about knowing exactly what we can do. And I do believe that the line from Cal McGregor was, we need to go and win, and that is not a problem. It was big chat. It was big chat. I sat here with Paddy. I sat the other night and I spoke and I says I was quite confident. I sat and I was also being, before that press conference, I was very on the fence, a bit sceptical. And I thought this was a banana skin actually. Says, I think this has got nothing each written all over it and potentially going out. After I then heard the words of the manager and Liam Scales and the sort of chat around the club, it was all laser focused, and they spoke a very good game, didn't they? They told us about how we knew what to do. We were going to go out there. We were going to play. There was no excuses. It was as simple as that. But then after the event, we listened to our manager, and as quick as you like it, the excuses come out. The pitch was terrible, wasn't it? Come on, seriously. The pitch wasn't great. But we showed in that sort of dying back end of the game, when we did start to get a wee bit of purchase, when we did look a wee bit threatening, that you could have caused them problems regardless of the pitch. It was everything that went before it was the problem. And as Mr. Nobody's saying there, I'm going to start trying to look at some of these. Brendan must take a massive responsibility. He must take a massive responsibility for the 2 games and the sort of forward line. He feared the worst for Yang Forest, and the second half is crazy. I agree with that. I will start trying to bring up some of these. If you have any questions, if you have anything, I will try and answer them, bring them up. So says I'm sitting here on my own. The rest of the guys, I think it was maybe a wee bit too rich for the blood. And if we're being perfectly honest, and I respect that, I think emotions were high, where some of them didn't want to come on and just be effing and blind and get off them. Because we always like to say, we're not trying to be better than people. We're all emotional on Celtic World Order, but we don't want to be the lowest common denominator. It would be easy for us to just sit there and shout and swear and effing blind. And, we always try to be objective about it. So I totally respect the guys for not wanting to come on there. So let's have a wee look at what the general consensus is. I say there's nearly 200 of these, and I know that this is 2011, so I really do appreciate you, because it's the nature of the beast, isn't it? When we get a great victory, or let's be honest, when we get something to laugh at by our opposition fans, then we will sit there and we will... 1 second, actually, my dog's man, let me back it. Go on then, let's go, boys. Quick, in you go. There we go. Sorry about that. Let the dog out and he's barking at the door, so I don't want that going through the stream all the time. But no, as we say, we sit there and we look at it, and anytime the results go our way, we're buzzing, we want to be up late, and we want to be getting full of content. Anytime we see our opposition, our rivals tripping up, we want to sit and feast on the content all night, and it's no different here. We bring ourselves together and we want to get a lot of stuff off our chest. As we say, start to bring up some KFC's going straight for it, yes. As covered with our board episode, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of staleness in that board. There's a lack of vision, and there's a lack of investment. But as we say, that the board are a side issue tonight. That will be an underpinning, of course it will, and it's something that we need to talk about, and it's something we will continue to talk about. In particular, I can imagine we'll be talking a lot more about it between now and the closing of the window, because as we said last night with Tony Hamilton, and we asked him about this game, he says the result of this game has massive ramifications. It spreads right across everything that we do at the club. And unfortunately, I think this we're in a position where we're in the self-serving prophecies, where we've heard before, we sell players and we bank money for the contingency of the times when we don't get in the Champions League. Well, that's came home to roost, doesn't it? And then it also asks the question, thankfully, Balakwisha and Sarachi look like that's going to be happening. That's far down the line. I believe that there's the medicals that are set up for tomorrow, and they will be coming in the door. But how much more will we get off the back of that? And will we see other people perhaps leaving? Now, I think as well, bring these up, absolutely Punch, well deserved. We deserved nothing on it. If you were watching or following our X feed during the game, there were some scathing home truths that were put out there, and we says we deserved absolutely nothing at that rate. I think that when you look at it, we probably could have played an extra 45 minutes of added time, and it was never going to be happening. Looking at it, yes, if I was to have picked the team, maybe Yang's the one that I would have dropped there. I maybe would have removed him, and I would have looked to maybe shoehorn in Arne Engels for a wee bit more sort of creative spark. The biggest problem was with that whole first half was similar to the first half we saw at Celtic Park. We were completely and utterly void of any spark, any tempo, any energy. And certainly I felt that first 15 to 20 minutes, the description I would give it was frantic. I don't know if it was the pressure was on the players, and that's a big thing. We talk about mental character and mental strength. Particularly, a lot of these guys haven't been in a pressure cooker situation where they've had so much riding on it when it's been the pot of gold or nothing. You know, we've had the fortunes of direct entry and safe passageway into Champions League, and bar the occasional game against Rangers, for example, or the cup final that we lost to Aberdeen, a lot of these guys haven't really had a lot riding on things. Now, you could argue and say, well, what about the Champions League? They're all important games. Yes, they are, but you're already there, and you know that if you don't win that one or you draw it, you've always got the next one to work on. Tonight was an all or nothing game, and the amount that was riding on it in terms of their stature, for them putting themselves in the shop window, for them becoming a Champions League player and having that on their CV, also in terms of the financial implications for the club, also for what that could mean in terms of signing policy for the club. There was so much riding on this game tonight that I don't think many of those players have been used to that. And I think maybe they wilted a little bit underneath that pressure. And I could see that the amount of misplaced passes was unreal. The midfield looked completely disjointed. They didn't look like they could get their foot on the ball. Everything was rushed. And it wasn't because Kairat Almighty were pushing as hard and they were pressing us and they were really, getting in about our hair and under our skin and uptight and making it hard. It was self-inflicted. It was hurrying about, loose passes. McGregor, I felt, was extremely poor. Benjamin Negrin just couldn't get a foothold in the game at all. And Hatate, we champion him. He's one of Paddy's favourite guys, and we always use the terms like a maverick and all this kind of stuff. He's high risk, high reward, but he was making the misplaced passes everywhere. I think then when you look at it from an attacking standpoint, Forrest, I mean, come on, what's actually happening there? But the biggest one, I need to mention it, and people won't like me saying it. Yang, holy moly. I would, people saying, Paddy's joking, saying, are you in the Yang Gang? I'm absolutely not in the Yang Gang. And tonight was another example as to why I'm not in the Yang Gang. The inconsistencies are always there with wingers. The inconsistencies are always there with young, inexperienced players. But that is the problem that Celtic have in certain positions, and that is one, is we don't have a guy that you can hang your hat on. Yang plays against Livy, and again, we'll caveat that it is Livy, but he looks energetic, he looks like he's doing the right things, but then he can't put that forward into a match where it really, really matters. In the same way that Dyson Maeda surprisingly couldn't deliver when it mattered. Now, there's a lot of worry or concern, a lot of rumours. We've mentioned that he was going to be a guy that would be moving on, win, lose or draw, after this game tonight. And if I'm being honest, here we go, the body language expert, all that kind of stuff. He has been cutting a bit of a frustrated, lost figure, I would say, in a lot of the games. We peaks and troughs here and there occasionally in matches, but tonight, along with everybody else on that side, Maeda was an absolute mile off. And between that one-on-one, I actually thought at one stage when he was buzzing about, they started getting that wee bit of anger about him. He looked like he was a guy that was not choking, but, running the risk of getting himself maybe sent off at times the way he was getting into tackles. I thought he's going to catch a card or, maybe even keying away a penalty. He was rushing back and bashing folk. But he just looks like a guy that had checked out. That one-on-one, that's another one where he could have... there was a great post that was put up. Go and find it. Guy put up 4 clips. He had the same run through, and he says, I believe here's the only 4 that I've got, and there's one other, which would be 5 I don't have access to. And he lists the amount of games since the end of May that Maeda's found himself in that position, fluffed his lines. And I agree with what he says. I think he looks like a guy whose mind's elsewhere. And even the penalty, now we know we've seen the squaff against Rangers where he wins it. He's not the cleanest of contact makers with the ball, but even that, he didn't look like a guy that was confident. He looked like a guy who was, and he looked frustrated, but I don't know how much that frustration was born out of the scoreline, his own personal, or is it something deeper? Is it a guy that knows that that's maybe, I'm just throwing it out there, maybe his last game for Celtic and he wants to go out on a high and he wants for, he wants to go out on high, he wants to give us something on the way out, and it's not quite happening, perhaps. But yeah, Maeda, terrible. I could literally tear this whole team to strips. Where do we start? No one is safe from blame. No one is safe from criticism. And I would put two of our bigger players directly into that. I'm talking about Carter Vickers and I'm talking about Cal McGregor. Now, Paddy gave a rousing, impassioned speech about Cal McGregor. And I see a lot on social media in the fallout for this. And they were saying things like, he's a spent force. I don't think he's a spent force. I wouldn't go that far. But what I would say is Cal McGregor has not been performing to the best of his abilities for quite a bit. And certainly last week, he was a shadow of anything that was making any difference or any real solid, meaningful contribution. And tonight, it was exact same. The biggest thing he's getting criticised for is doing loads of pointing and dictating the play, telling people where to go. But the amount of times that point was back the way, back to his defender, to encourage the shoehorn of death, it's not what you need. Paddy sat here and spoke about guys wanting to take the game with the throat, do the unfashionable things and run through. And there's another one, Steve was saying it, because we brought him in, Carter Vickers, he's saying he has to go, he's had enough, doesn't turn up for big games, he's a mile off it. What I would say is, I think these guys are undoubtedly quality players. They are two of our best players still to the day, and they will be probably for another season, two, whatever it may well be. But part of the problem with that is we talk about complacency with the board. It's also a bit of complacency within the ranks of the team. And yes, what would help that? The board getting into the wallets and getting the money out and allowing us to do it. But Carter Vickers and McGregor have been absolute nailers, nailed on to start every single game. And it's not necessarily because they are the best and always perform the best. They will play sometimes in spite of a bad performance. And yeah, I would say over the piece of their time at Celtic, they're probably at least at 7 on 10 most games. But they do have their drops off. But the problem is, there's nobody who's really, truly, properly pushing them, making them feel uncomfortable and asking questions about their position. We find ourselves in a situation where they can just get in the team by default most times. And the only time they'll maybe get removed for the team is if, as we've seen recently, if it is a game, for example, against Livy at home where you're expected to take care of business, or it's the likes of Falkirk in the Cup and things like that. That's when we're trying to get in the alternative options coming in. That's when we're rotating players, we're pulling guys out. And sometimes you see guys have come in and they give a good account of themselves. Like I thought, for example, Arne Engels, when he got the opportunity at the weekend, he played quite well and he probably deserved a start tonight. When he came on, of course, did he really step up to the mark and do much to really contribute? No, I didn't. But again, that's a wash, the whole team. We were looking for maybe a bit of creativity. We were looking for a good delivery. We were looking for a bit of threat, a good pass from him. And again, it was just another guy where everything that he'd done was completely null and void. There was no attacking threat from him. The deliveries in the box were woeful at best for most of the time. And that's the sad reality that we find ourselves in. Forrest, bless the guy, and I hate that because it sounds patronising. But again, it's a combination of board stuff, but also setting ourselves up. Forrest, he's been a great servant, but he was a mile off it tonight. Yang, if it hadn't been for the wee purple patches, I think tonight could be another one where folk would say, I never want to see Yang play in a first team starting position for Celtic. That's the reality. And that is exactly where we sort of find ourselves there. And you know, Kings of Scotland, Jokers of Europe, sadly, it's true. And Square Sausage Mick, I don't know if you've just joined in there. Can we stop analysing the game, talk about the real problem? We've been on for about 29 minutes and we're speaking about stuff. It's one of those situations where we have done our constant, and we will continue to do so, our battling the board or calling out the board, whatever term you want to put on it, we will do it, and we'll never shy away from telling the hard truths. But I do throw this out here again, and I think we're not defending the board. But ultimately tonight, the board are a portion of the blame, yes, and I'll repeat it because in case you just hadn't heard it, them buying players in early would have helped the cause, would have given us a fighting chance. But look at the optics, look at the manager's credentials at Kairat Almaty, look at the value of squad that's under £15 million versus the 130 million of what Celtic had at their disposal. What was out there tonight, our elite manager with all the tactics and all the plans and all the sort of technologies and the best of the best, but it probably isn't, but we would claim it to be, versus Kairat Almaty, the resources, the behind the scenes stuff. This was simply down to players and managerial tactics tonight, because I refuse to believe in any way, shape or form that Celtic, that squad, for its deficiencies and all, for its underperforming players and all, shouldn't have had enough in the tank to beat a Kairat Almaty team who had three of their best first names in the team sheets out of their side tonight. Their goalkeeper, they had a young, I think he was a 2021-year-old goalkeeper, thrust into one of the biggest games of his life and rises to the occasion. Yes, and maybe garbage penalties, but you still got to save them. Edmilson, biggest threat, not there. Their star boy that's been sold to Chelsea, not there. They were probably crapping their pants, for lack of a better term, about playing Celtic tonight. But what did they do? They looked at what they had and they found a way to make it work. That's what Celtic failed to do. That's what our manager failed to do. That's what our players failed to do. Find a way to make it work. Plan A didn't work, and try and plan A better didn't work. Yes, there's maybe a lack of options to change it and move it around. But for me, the players and the manager have to they need to shoulder a heavy amount of this blame tonight. You can't sit there and just shout the board, and we will, and fans will do that, and we will continue to call out beyond it. But I just want to bring it back to base camp and take off the easy get out of jail, which is thrown at the board, because the board didn't make our midfield anonymous tonight. The board didn't make Dyson Maeda fluff his lines when he get through on goal. The board didn't make our penalty missers miss their penalties. That falls on players. And that's the reality. And there we go. I mean, as I say, this is the key point. Guys like Kingsley, brilliant, mate. Like, honestly, I mean that wholeheartedly. You deserve to laugh. If folk won't like me saying that, but I've said it before, Celtic fans, and myself included, we will have a laugh when our rivals or other teams fail and fall flat on their face. And sometimes you just got to suck it up. We don't like it. It's not nice. But that's it. Don't dish it out and laugh and whatever if you can't take it. And what I will say is see, when I expect Rangers to get hammered tomorrow night against Bruges, it's scant consolation, but at least they'll have the consolation of getting beat by a good team. Because, geez, can you imagine if we played Club Bruges? Can you imagine if we even played any of the other ones that would have potentially have been there? Even like Bal were looking like a far harder proposition than this side that we've got there. And I can see some people are jumping on the defence and saying the manager can only work with what he's got and things like that. And if you turn to the bench, you turn to the bench and you maybe don't have the options there. That's all fine and fair well, but some of the best managers, or even some of the most average managers, find a way to get points. And that comes back down to what we say, like whenever we play teams like Kilmarnock, or we play like a Livingston or anybody like that, and we sit and complain about them 2 banks of 5 and, you know, scrapping and throwing bodies in the line and making it stuffy. That's finding a way to do what you need to do to try and get points by whatever means come about. And Celtic, for example, I don't think, unlike at home, I don't think that Kairat Almaty were quite as compact in the game. I don't think that they were, we were putting them under siege. We were making it quite comfortable for them. Yes, we had the lion's share of the possession. Yes, we had an amazing amount of passes and all that kind of garbage, but it was just possession over potency. It meant absolutely nothing in the end. It was probably about 40% shoehorn around the back until we got into deep trouble late on the game where we started to poke it forward. And when we look at some of the guys that we brought on, did they make that much of a difference? Probably not. Even when you look at some of those changes, we continue to go down this route. Kieran Tierney, fantastic player, but a guy who can't finish a game. And that was always going to be the case. And then we start bringing in other guys. It's good to see guys like Donovan not getting a chance. Yeah, it is. But by God, should we be bringing him on in 2025 at this moment in time, thrust them into a game like that with everything that's riding on it? No, we shouldn't. Should we be bringing in Dane Murray? Yeah, we should be feeding him into the team, but should we have to bring him on in this game? No, we shouldn't. It's quite a sad reality that we find ourselves in. And do you know what's kind of funny? I laughed because when we brought in Adam Ida, and you know what I think of Adam Ida, and we've been sitting there and we've been criticising him and we've been, firing into him and saying he's not the standard. He came on and I was sitting there and I was primed to come on and Celtic to have qualified and says, do you know what? I hold my hands up. Adam Ida made a difference when he came on. He looked more direct for a change. He looked like he was an actual threat. All right, there wasn't too much in ways of testing the goalkeeper and that kind of stuff, but he looked like he'd made a difference and he looked like he was really trying a lot more than he had. But then, unfortunately, all that good faith that he'd built up with me, it was gone. Toast with one strike of the ball for the penalty spot. And a lot of people are saying not the standard, needs to go, things like that. Yeah. What I was confused about, though, to jump into penalties, was the order in which we take them. Because they always say put your best penalty taker first. And undoubtedly, whether you love him or loathe him, it's Arne Engels, isn't it? And he steps up and he's a picture-perfect penalty. Exactly what you need. If he steps up and buries that first one, it just breeds a wee bit of confidence, doesn't it? Because you're hitting first and it gives you that bit of confidence. Then we see what happened with their two penalty takers. One, maybe it's a sad indictment of what the opposition thought is, where, all right, he ended up wanting a clown because he hit the bar, but their striker thought they could turn up and Panenka, the goalkeeper, that's how confident they were. That's what they thought is. That was the level of disrespect and dealt out that in a penalty shootout. That guy thought, I'm going to do a Panenka now. It didn't work out, but he will not be bothering about that now because they managed to get themselves through. But I think if we set up Engels first and he puts the ball in the net with that sort of power and that precision, G's you up, you've got one in the bank. Will they then go and miss their two penalties? Remains to be seen, but you always get that head start. And I just found the order a bit strange. That's the one thing that really got me, was the order we were doing it. I would have liked to have seen Engels straight up, then probably Callum McGregor straight up, and then you start to feed in your guys. But Adam Ida and Dice Maeda, for example, it's kind of unforgivable for them as our strikers to miss the penalty from there. That's what I would say about that. And just to I don't want to keep this too long. Obviously, it's late on and this could go on and we could go around in circles. I just wanted to give you a sort of initial reaction, if you will, to what I'm sort of thinking about it. What is your thoughts? I know that a lot of you are saying the board, and see this saying here that this, and I'll just want to bring this up. It says haha, but I don't know I don't know what that is. It may well be a Rangers one. I'll remove it anyway. I don't care, but the board will survive this. That's the sad reality. We spoke about it on our board special. The board will survive this. 100%. Now, we've sat here and we've spoke about people saying, sack the board. And the reality is, as much as we would love drastic change on the board, sack the board isn't going to work this time round. It's just simply not going to work, and it wouldn't be for the want of trying. I would always encourage people, Celtic fans, other platforms, social media, whatever it may well be, to voice an honest and uncompromised opinion and bring some home truths about how we are ran. Yes, we are ran extremely well. We said this in our episode, as a business, but our business is also football, and you need to invest on the pitch. I mean, you've got your commentators on Amazon Prime or TNT, whatever you're watching it on, and they're saying about lack of investment, and even they're pointing that out, then, that's the outside world with people with no skin in the game telling you what we already know. They're looking at it and calling it out. But it is an old boys club, unfortunately. It's old pals that are in there. It's the bone club mentality, and that isn't going to change anytime soon. I think realistically, our only way of possibly forcing real, meaningful, genuine change, it's not going to be grassroots, because the board don't need to move on, because we are not in a financial instability. We're not in a situation where we are in danger of going out of business and all that kind of stuff. So it won't work like it did back then. What we need to try and do is we need to try and establish the remaining percentage of shares and shareholders that are out there in the ether, that are guys like me and you, or your cousin or your auntie or whoever it may well be that's got their shares. They're all scattered about, and if we can somehow bring them together and have it as like a fans trust type thing, where they're all sort of clubbed together as one interest, and it gives you a cumulative enough amount of shareholding that you can look to ask for fan representation, someone who represents that body of fans, to get a seat on the board and put real, meaningful fan voice inside the club. I think that's the only way that we can possibly force a bit of change, because we've looked at the shareholdings, and I've got it here just in case you want to know. Line nominees limited 34.54 to 35% roughly. That's Dermot Desmond. That's a vehicle for who holds his shares. Then you've got Bank of New York notorieties or nominees, 17.71. It's a hedge fund. It's an investment fund. It's people that just want cold, hard cash. They're not interested in pushing the boat out. They'll be quite happy with the status quo. They'll be happy with their dividends every other year, and so on and so forth. And then you drop down. Chris Traynor, fan, 11%. He's not on the board. Could be for other reasons. And of course, Chris McKean, 6.23. Again, not on the board. That could be for other reasons. Now, unless you can get into bed with one or both of them and the rest of the fans to come together and really make a fist there, then that's the only way that you could really, really sway change. But ultimately, when you look at it, Chris Traynor, James Mark McKean, Keane, they are pretty much they're there. They've got a good wage in the club. They've got, I think it's about 16 million for Traynor, for example. He's a businessman. He's Celtic's business. He's a multi-millionaire, and he'll be there to make money first and foremost, as any investor should, to be honest. But I don't think he'll be too bored about rocking the boat, because we've talked about his expertise. It doesn't seem to have been putting too much of that in there. What's important for us is to try and find those other fans out there, those other shareholders. And it's all wee tiny, small, fragmented shares. But if you can bring them together, as we can see, 6.23% ranks you in one of the top 6 shareholders of the club. And there's enough out there to add them all up and bring it together and get on the board. And that's the only way I think that we're really, truly going to force any level of change, that we're only going to be able to have a voice and try and influence it, vote or whatever it may well be, and have a meaningful say. Boycotts, we've heard that. Is it going to work? Well, here's one thing I want to bring up, and you tell me what your thoughts on it, because we now find ourselves Thursday, Saturday. That's what we're going to do. And let's have a wee look at this, because are you getting excited? This is the projected pots. I mean, it's exciting stuff, isn't it? It's exciting stuff. Now, what I would do is, and I would say we'll look at that, and there's some names that you recognise. Of course there is. It's not exactly whetting the appetite, is it? It's not exactly wanting you to go out there and spend your, maybe about 150 quid, whatever they may well want to take off you to get your 4-game package for there. I mean, are you buzzing for Bran at home? Can you not wait to get Braga at home? You're looking forward to that one? Or what about a big sexy tie? What about getting Feyenoord or Porto at home? Is that one that'll do it for you? Or dealing with Zagreb? I mean, come on. The biggest draw there in terms of games is surely got to be Roma, maybe Aston Villa. And that's saying something, that's your marquee tie. Maybe even pot 2, not in terms of because they're a big team, but Nottingham Forest, it's a Premier League team, aye, that's nice. But I mean, look at the rest of the stuff in there. It's purgatory, isn't it? And that's the sad reality of the decisions that our board haven't made, and the lack of precision and decision making and taking the game with the throat that our players and manager have put us in. Where your big exciting games are going to be against essentially has-beens of European football that are big names on paper, but that's as much as they are. And Celtic can gladly join that rank of the Europa League because we're a big name in European football that don't have the performances to match with it. Now, what is interesting is a lot of fans for years and years and have says, "Oh, but they've done away with the drop down for the Champions League. It's kind of crap because we could go deep in that competition." That's my patronising voice that you hear for these people that say that. Well, we would have to let's test that theory because there is some of them out there have got their wish. Europa League football. Now, what I will say is, and I put out on our social media, I says, is there some way that you can just not play in European competition this season? Because forget about the Champions League. Now, I know, of course, if we get through, then you would maybe buy more players and you could give yourself a better chance. But even with that, if that team made it in the Champions League, it needed massive, massive surgery to get anywhere near up to the standard that it was last season for that decent out in the Champions League. And even looking at that there, just based on what we've saw against playing Kairat Almaty, I remind you of that. Even the plankton in there, Victoria Pilsen, we all saw them against Rangers. Even they start to look like a team that could give you a game, don't they? If you base it off the two legs. Utrecht, Riker, Genk. Ah, crap. Well, we were saying that about Kairat Almaty. And you probably find that most of these teams in there will have a better coefficient ranking than Kairat Almaty. So we find ourselves in a peculiar situation where even the Europa League, the fabled Europa League, that we could go deep and we could do a good run in it because look at what Rangers have done. And I stick by that. There's no reason why in seasons gone by with some of the squads that we've had and how we've played that we would, in my opinion, have done well there. But at this moment in time, there's no guarantees for that, is there? And yeah, bring in Balakwisha, bring in Sarachi, it's a start. But brace yourself, strap yourselves in, because I still see a player leaving. And if I was a gambling man, I don't think there's any smoke without fire. The Maeda stuff's come up long enough that I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. Likewise, or Hatati or somebody like that. I think someone will end up going because that's what we do. That's how we cut the cloth. But then that begs the question of how do we then react to that? How do we kick on? How do we change what we do? And you'll laugh when I say this because I'm laughing thinking about it in my head. The board don't have a leg to stand on at this moment in time. And I repeat, it's a historical problem. Tonight's the tip of the iceberg. The board problem has been long-standing, 10, 15 plus years, where they've not invested at the right time. I mean, I only need to refer you back to this here. Now we can add that big red X onto there. So there's a 4-season period. And it wasn't as if this was, desperation stuff. It wasn't as if this was Ronnie Dyler, 3/4 of the stadium nearly closed material. 2018, 19, 20, 21. And we've been out in qualifying round 3 and qualifying round 2 against, let's be totally honest, bang average European plankton. And we've done it again. So we didn't invest for those. We scraped past the stand. I say scrape. We beat them comfortably over the two legs, but it was nip and tuck, as we well know. We scared at one point. We were fortunate. That's the reality between 2017 to present. We have been fortunate on 3 occasions by getting direct entry into the Champions League. That's been the fortunate bit where, yeah, we might have done the spending a wee bit later, but we've done it because we were there. This is another situation where we bring the clock back and we had to do it. We had to secure it on our own terms and we couldn't do it. And what I was saying as I digressed off and this is where you laugh. The board don't have a leg to stand on, but they could just scrape back a minor bit of credibility with us, the fans, with the manager, and I'd probably say the players, because maybe they'll feel like the manager's not been supported and they could be doing with a wee bit of backup, a wee bit of competition, despite players liking the idea of getting into the squad all the time. I'm sure that any professional worth their salt wants to be tested. That's the reality. But the board could, on top of Sarashi, on top of Balikwisha, that would leave us, we say, 100k loan for him, and I believe about 5 million for Balikwisha. That leaves us at this moment in time still with about £15.5 million in player trading profit alone. Gravy on top, that's not accounting for what's in the bank, the 65, 70 million or more, whatever it may well be. Now, I know that the wallets are going to take a hit because we don't get that prize money getting into the Champions League. I know that. And ultimately, that then means that we're probably going to go and we'll probably sell someday. But you have to go and at least spend that remaining £16 million, maybe even just a wee bit more. Go and do another £30 million spend, because there's nothing guaranteed at this moment in time, and that team are on its knees in terms of options. And see if they've got any thoughts of what some fans have said about getting out there and getting into the Champions League and maybe giving it a run and doing something. They're going to need to spend that money, because right now, where I'm at, that team that we just saw over 2 legs, that's lucky to get through to the knockout phase of the Europa League, even the Europa League. Because those teams that are all on there, the vast majority of them, are better than Kairat Almaty. I know you could say it's 2 legs in isolation, but I repeat what I said earlier on, that falls us into we'll never be that bad again. We said that after Parkhead. Hold my beer in Almaty. You think that was bad? Check this out. And that's where we're at. So I think it's important for the board. They still do have an opportunity to influence the rest of our season in a positive way. Do I think they're going to do it? No, I don't. But they must surely now be sitting there, wherever they are. Don't know if they were at the game, I think I see them on the telly. But wherever they are, they know what's coming their way. They know what's coming their way on social media. I wouldn't even be surprised if, because it's the way, the nature of the beast, that you would get people in some way, shape or form voicing opinions at any given opportunity, because that's probably what it is. And they're maybe a wee bit fortunate that the next game at the weekend is at Ibrox, and then you've got your transfer window shutting, and then you've got the international break. Because if the game was at Celtic Park at the weekend, it'd be mass issues. But I wouldn't be surprised, as we've seen over the sort of years previously, that you might get some level of fan groups or protest or something turning up at Celtic Park. It probably wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, because they'll be mindful, as I am right now, that there is no real opportunity to voice it in the flesh between now and the window closing. So they'll know that. They'll know that they're in for a rough ride. And as I say, they might just want to try and save their skin by at least, I know it's too little too late, but regardless, we need those players in. We need more players in. We need at least 4 players in, minimum, absolute bare minimum, probably more. But we need those in the door. And they would do well to go and do that, because not even just a case of talking about Europe. It's funny how these things, it'll be really, really interesting to see how we bounce back for the game at the weekend, because we go to Ibrox and, yeah, they're absolutely mince as well. They are on their knees and they look desperate, and at this moment in time, we say any team that plays them looks like they could score against them. But it'll be interesting to see how their game pans out tomorrow. As I say, I expect them to get beat, but we've inadvertently given them a shot in the arm. They're in a real under siege situation where there's a lot of pressure on the manager, there's a lot of pressure on the players, there's that Egerman garbage, and now their nearest rivals have just been knocked out of the Champions League, either behind, and I expect them still to get beat. But that's a lot of fuel to fire your desire to maybe get through, is it not? We've given them a wee inadverted shot in the arm because, as improbable as it seems for them, they know the importance now that we don't have that Champions League money of maybe just shortening that gap a wee bit. And they'll also probably know that historically over time we don't go and spend that money. So we've gave them a wee layup. But Alan, 5-0 Bruges. I'd love that. I'd love it. I'm just throwing that out there. I know people after a game like tonight saying, why are you talking about them? I think it's just for context. I think it is important to mind that because we're then looking at the game at the weekend, and obviously if they go out and they get tanked as well, they're going to be further in the mire, and it could be like two bald men fighting over a comb at the weekend with the way that we've both been playing. But if it was a positive thing for them, then it just changes the spin on it, doesn't it? And I think for me, I'm looking at this game at Sunday and I really don't know what to expect because I expected the disappointment of the result at Celtic Park against Kairat would have bounced us back and kicked us on. I don't know how these players are going to be feeling because what I saw tonight was a level of mental weakness. In terms of come back to trying to analyse the game, I thought that there was no aggression, there was no, and I probably sound like Russell Martin, don't I? There was no desire. There was no drive. There wasn't. And the mental fortitude wasn't there because guys fluffed their lines when it mattered. Can't afford to go and do that at the weekend. Because some people, there's a lot of pessimistic folk out there, but a lot of folk were saying there was a wee whiff of the COVID-19 season around about the way things are going. And again, we've been very fortunate in terms of they've been absolutely terrible and it's just made things look that wee bit sweeter. But you can't take anything for granted, and I think tonight was an absolute prime example of why you can't take anything for granted. Nothing's a given. You have to earn the right to win. You have to earn the right to play. You have to earn the right to win trophies. You need to earn the right to get into the top table at the Champions League. And we haven't done that. We haven't earned our stripes this season. And it's the first time, as we say, in 4 seasons, with 3 safe passes, direct entry. That's what we had. The first time we've been asked to go and earn it, we can't do it. And just to finish off, there's a lot of money in the bank and a lot of blame shelved at the board. They need to invest. But ultimately tonight was won and lost on the pitch. It was lost by the players. It was lost by the tactics. It was lost by the manager. It was lost by the decision making and how we played. And we can never divert away from that. No one is, bulletproof to criticism. And Brendan Rodgers, as we say, we always talk about him being an elite manager and adapting and doing things and that. Well, maybe we just got to temper that. I still think he's one of the best managers that we could get. But again, if we have a look back at it, beat by a team ranked 311 in the coefficient rankings, fluffed their lines in a cup final. I know trebles aren't easy to win, but beat off a Jimmy Thielen side that done nothing more than just make it hard for us. Outsmarted by Barry the Brogue Ferguson. 3-0 disaster against Philip Clement, who was ridiculed. You start to add these things up. The man's not avoided criticism. That's all I'm saying on that. It's not a board. It's not a Brendan bashing. It's not. We've praised him. But I think we've got to bring it back down to reality. It's easy for a manager to go and say, I didn't have this, the pitch was bad, so on and so forth. That's a manager's privilege, isn't it? They can always hide behind something else. And sometimes you've got to shine that big ugly light on you and say, do you know what? I didn't get it right. So anyway, plenty to think about, and that's it. As we say, it's not the result we want. I appreciate everybody. It's been nearly 300 at one point. We're dipping down. We're about 250 now. And as I say, I would have liked to have brought up some comments. A lot of them are just flying by. It's just hard to do. And thinking top here, and you're doing it as yourself as well as a season. I know there's been a lot of disagreeing in there, and that's the nature of the beast. People say things like that, as I said, and I know there's been a wee bit of sort of an arguing, and we don't want that. We don't want you to be off on out, right? Football, I know it's life to some people. It means a lot to me, but let's not we'll be arguing amongst ourselves. That's the kind of thing that Celtic fans will criticise other fan bases off. Let's not bring ourselves down to that level as a season. If anybody's seen anything or disagreed with anything been put in there, as I say, I can't unfortunately govern all these things. I can't see these things. I do try my best, and as I say earlier, I apologise if the comment that was flagged was a bit colourful. As I say, that's not the kind of stuff that we want to see. We don't back that. We don't condone that. I understand that people are obviously sort of emotions are high, but as I say, just conduct yourself in the best way that you possibly can. Thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. I know it wasn't the result that we wanted, and I'd rather be talking to you in better circumstances, but that's the hand that Celtic have dealt us. So we'll be back to talk about it through the week. We're obviously going to have here's what you could have won Champions League draw. We'll have a wee look at that just because, and of course we'll then get the exciting Europa League draw and strap yourselves in for that, and then we'll look forward towards the game at the weekend. It's scant consolation, but you're now just hoping that we get the same as we got last week for Rangers, because you only care about your own result. But as we've seen tonight with some of the people, they'll come in, they'll laugh at us tonight, and hopefully we will laugh at them tomorrow, and that's the way the merry-go-round goes. So anyway, I'll get out your hair. Take care of yourselves. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, hail, hail. See you all later.